Supreme Chancellor Obi-Wan Kenobi by Stone Freak. Chapter 60. Quinlan Vos in the underworld of Coruscant. Smoke curls slowly towards the ceiling to join with the dim fog already descended over the bar's main hall. The many glowing ends of smokers glow eerily in the dimly lit room like eyes in dark. Quinlan nurses his mug of a seat as he keeps scanning the room with sharp eyes, his sensitive ears working overtime to try and pick up the slightest bit of interesting conversation, preferably something to do with the Senate bombing, maybe a cocky bounty hunter bragging about their excellent work. It's unlikely that anyone taking such a high-stake job and executing it as well as this would openly brag about it, but there's always room for hope. People tend to be stupider than you'd expect.
"Well done, stranger. Haven't seen you here before,"
the barkeep suddenly says, two of his forearms wiping a glass clean as the other two cross over his chest.
"Why are you here?"
Quinlan takes a long sip of a seat and wonders if he should even bother to reply or if staying silent would be more suspicious than grunting some vague answer.
"Bounty hunting,"
he finally grunts, mouth still on the rim of his mug, muffling the sound.
"Must be new to Coruscant, then,"
the barkeep concludes with an ugly snort. Interesting.
"What makes you say that?"
Quinlan knows it's not his clothes. He's tailored his disguise to look like most other bounty hunters. Generic traveler's clothes with hidden body armor and two blasters on his belt. His lightsaber is expertly hidden in a pocket between his shoulder blades, easy for him to reach with the Force should he need it, but not obvious to any observer. In fact, Quinlan has even hidden his tattoos with makeup and dirt to keep his connection to his home planet secret, and he styled his thick braid locks into a lump up on his head, rather than letting them hang free as he usually does. So not only does he not look like a Kifar, he certainly doesn't look like a Jedi. At all. He should look generic enough to pass unnoticed, so what is it that makes the barkeep think he's new?
"You'd bet if you'd been here long enough, you'd know that work is scarce right now, ever since the Hizleet and I sent out a warning."
The Hizleet and I? The Assassin's Guild? What? Quinlan barks. What warning? For what? He's not new on Coruscant, but he's been away on war missions for months. Clearly he's missed more in Coruscant's underworld than he'd thought. He drums his fingers against the bar counter, playing up his agitation. The barkeep lets out a rattling laugh, hoarse and wet, from the back of his throat.
"Apparently one of theirs has gone missing, and until they can find her, they're gonna keep an extra careful eye on every single assassin, scoundrel, thief, bounty hunter, you name it, on Coruscant."
Quinlan blinks from slight shock.
"Someone's gone after a Hizleet and I?"
Whoever did that must be suicidal. The Hizleet and I are not to be trifled with, and if they're even issuing warnings before knowing who the culprit is, then it must be one of their more well-regarded and favored members. By the Force, what a mess! Quinlan keeps his cursing to the privacy of his own mind, but can't help the darkening of his face. What shit fucking timing! No! Of all times.
"Apparently the last idiot hasn't been born yet,"
the barkeep snorts.
"Word is she didn't check in, and they haven't received a dead drop, so they're certain she's either still alive, or someone skilled enough to stop the dead drop did it, which is why they're not fucking around right now."
Quinlan nods slowly. He wonders if there's any way for him to get around this, to get information on the things he wants, rather than some underworld squabble he doesn't give one shit in the galaxy about. He pauses as the thought strikes him and the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. An HE assassin goes missing just around the time there's a Senate bombing that manages to catch Kenobi in the blast. Is it just the most spectacular coincidence? Fuck. Some fucking maniac hired an HE assassin to get rid of Kenobi, no matter which office the bombs went off, and Quinlan is sure of it, and then killed said assassin. What a ballsy fucker. Quinlan almost has to respect them for it. Almost.
"What happens if someone stumbles upon the missing Hizleet and I member?"
Quinlan is an expert tracker, and now that he has a direction to go in, Well, this missing assassin will not elude him for long.
The barkeep shrugs slightly, putting away the glass and picking up a new one to clean before he says, "They didn't say. They did leave a com number for information. If you know anything, bounty hunter, I advise you to step carefully. The Hisleet and I may be absolute professionals at the top of their field, but they're also completely crazy bitches."
Quinlan only barely refrains from rolling his eyes.
"I don't know anything, but if I stumble upon a fucking assassin corpse in the underbelly of this damn planet, I don't want to get fucking shanked for it, yeah?"
Slightly louder than usual speaking tone, just to make sure his words are overheard. If anyone's interested, they'll come up to him. If the Hisleet and I are hiding somewhere nearby, they may actually refrain from trying to kill Quinlan once he finds the missing assassin.
The barkeep lets out that ugly laugh again. "You're a smart one, bounty hunter."
He slaps a small piece of flimsy on the bar before picking up a new glass to clean with his second pair of arms. With that, the conversation is over and the barkeep turns away, 6 pairs of eyes scanning the crowd, likely looking for customers wanting to spend more money. Quinlan taps a finger against the bar before he picks up the small piece of flimsy. It's almost empty, only has the words Hisleet and I and a comm number on it. So that's how it is. The barkeep wasn't just gossiping with a new face. He's likely working for the HE to get as many eyes and ears on Coruscant open and looking as possible. He hides a grin in his mug. Smart. Tracking when you don't know who you're tracking is hard. Actually, that's a fucking understatement. It's almost impossible. However, Quinlan is the best. He's not the only tracker in the order, but he's by far the best one. He doesn't need exact information to do this thing. There's a reason he's generally the go-to guy for missions that deal with the criminal underworld and hunting down important criminals. Too bad he was off-planet on a different mission when the investigation during the Senate bombing started. Then again, they have Shiana on it, and she's good too. Scratching the back of his neck, Quinlan looks at the flimsy piece again. He wonders who wrote it. If it was the barkeep, it's useless. If it was one of the HEs, then there's a chance he can find her instead and use her as a starting point for his tracking. He closes his eyes, draws upon the force, and focuses it on the flimsy in his hand. A Togruta. Speckled manchas, sharp teeth, sturdy black boots, typical bounty hunter clothing, a hidden nook of the bar behind the orchestra. Bullseye! Quinlan cracks his knuckles and gulps down the rest of his acete. He glances around. No one seems to have noticed anything. Good. Time to find himself an HE agent keeping track of the bounty hunters and general scoundrels in this bar to see if he can get anything out of her. Time will tell. He heads off towards the hidden nook and weaves through the crowded tables with confident steps. He catches a glimpse of the assassin quickly, and in the same instant, he knows that she caught sight of him as well. Not surprising, you don't get to join the Hisleet and I unless you're good. He's still a bit away from her table when she suddenly kicks one of the chairs away. It scrapes loudly against the floor and stares him straight in the eyes, her hand gesturing toward the chair. An invitation. Her mouth falls open slightly just to show off sharp teeth. A warning. Quinlan takes the offered, in a manner of speaking, seat and sits down by her table. Her only response is the slight narrowing of her eyes and a tilt of her head. She's not talking first. Quinlan doesn't even attempt to hide his grin.
"So, I've heard you're missing someone."
As far as greetings go, this one would likely make Kenobi pinch the bridge of his nose and roll his eyes. But it's just the kind of greeting that fits the situation, in Quinlan's opinion. There's no way the HE representative, if you can call her that, is going to want any polite chit-chat. Straight to the point is more likely to win him favors. Have you now? It's not the question.
"Yeah, the barkeep just told me and gave me this."
He drops the flimsy on the table, text side up. Her eyes glance toward it, and the muscle over her left eye pulls upwards, the Togruta equivalent of a raised eyebrow. I don't see how that has anything to do with me. Quinlan lets his grin take on a sharp edge. He's not surprised that she's playing dumb, but he knows he's right.
"Most probably would think so, but I'm the best tracker on this side of the galaxy, and I know you wrote that note, which means you're one of the HE, which in turn means that unless the barkeep was lying to my face, you are in fact missing someone.
He would have preferred not to make contact at all, as odds are that she'll want to follow him. However, if he wants a starting point when looking for this assassin, then he's just going to have to wear his big boy underwear and do it anyway. And if she does tag along, well, it'll be a pickle to deal with in regards to the Jedi investigation, because how the fuck does he stop her from trying anything without getting into a real inconvenient spot with the HE? Oh, well, that's a concern for later. Priority right now is getting a starting point. In the blink of an eye, she whips out a vibro blade from her sleeve and aims it at Quinlan's throat. "Here we go." Quinlan meets her stare unflinchingly.
Someone who can find your missing friend.
Her eyes are as cold as the eyes of a loom, and her mouth twists into a toothy snarl. "Someone who went after her in the first place, perhaps." Clumsy. If she suspected him of being the culprit, accusing him like this is... His grin widens further. Clever! So she's trying to appear wrong-footed and wound up, easy to manipulate and in over her head, is she? Well, enough games. Quinlan doesn't have the patience for this. The longer it takes him to find the missing assassin, the longer it will take him to ascertain whether or not she has anything to do with the bombing, and the longer it will take him to collect evidence. He laughs, low and throaty, but his mirth doesn't break through the tension at all. His would-be assailant is still vigilant.
Enough, games. You want to find your missing member, and so do I.
A glint of the blade, and Quinlan quickly dodges backwards in his chair to avoid the swipe of the assassin's blade.
"Easy now,"
he says, hands still not straying toward his blasters or his lightsaber. "Why do you want to find her? What interest is her disappearance to you?" Her eyes catch Quinlan's in a staring match, and it's clear that she's still judging him, trying to test his mettle, waiting for him to slip up.
But to think that she was involved in something related to a barium mine. So finding her to find out whether or not my hunch is true is rather high on my list of priorities.
Pound 2, Jedi Order duty. Semantics. Is that so?
The vibro blade doesn't waver the slightest. Quinlan is genuinely impressed with the strength of her arm to keep it level without shaking for so long. How about you give me some information, like from where she last made contact with you, and I'll put my skills to use and let you know when I find them.
And if that's after he's made an official Jedi investigation of the place, she doesn't need to know that, does she? She finally sheathes her vibro blade, but her eyes remain narrowed and focused on Quinlan. "You may call me La." Quinlan is actually impressed with himself for getting a name out of her, fake or not. He had assumed she'd stay fully anonymous throughout their entire acquaintance.
"Call me Vaughn."
He reaches his hand out for a handshake, ready to withdraw it at any moment. La is fast, but there's no way she's a match for the reflexes of a trained Jedi, so if she tries anything dangerous, he's ready. She simply slaps his hand away. "I don't trust you, and I'll be with you every step of the way. Don't for a second think you can fool me into giving you information and let you run off with it." Her face distorts into a snarling grimace. "Either we both go, and don't think I'm without backup for even the briefest of moments, bounty hunter, or we don't go at all. Got it?" Quinlan makes a face. That's less than ideal. He's going to have to be very creative if he wants to be able to get information to the Jedi without outing himself and without letting La take anything important.
What a fucking mess this is. He groans. "Fine, but you're not going to touch anything when I find her until I've found out what I need."
"You're not in charge here, bounty hunter." La bares her sharp teeth again, leaning forward in her chair.
"Actually."
Quinlan bares his teeth at her in turn, though admittedly his are less impressive.
"I think you'll find that I am. You want to find her. I can find her for you, but either you do as I say or I fuck off and find her without your information and without you getting anything out of me."
Hopefully she won't call his bluff on that, because Coruscant is big. He doesn't even know who he's looking for, and he'd rather not make an enemy of the entire his leet and die. "Fine, but I'll be watching you every step of the way, bounty hunter. If you try anything, it'll be the last thing you do." Tracking with someone watching him, someone who isn't supposed to know he's a Jedi, is a very annoying experience. It means a lot more making up bantha shit about faded footprints, fake data transfers, as if Quinlan can hack into that kind of system with that kind of ease and speed. To ensure his psychometric flashes and force tracking looks like non-force enhanced tracking. It's a pain in the ass, and if Quinlan could dodge law without it coming back to bite him in the ass, it would. He knows that his leet and die well enough that if he tries it, his face will be on HE bounties faster than he can finish the tracking, which will fuck up his future undercover work. So he has to play nice with law, no matter how much extra work it is. Kenobi owes it for this. As soon as he recovers, Quinlan's gonna make him buy dinner or something. Or maybe Quinlan will just take it out on his ass in the sparring ring. Whichever. Kenobi will recover. Quinlan refuses to entertain anything else. At least he's been lucky enough to find an actual trail of scramblers. If he were a betting man, which he is on occasion, but not about things like this, he would wager that some of them have been removed or moved to new locations to obfuscate the trail. But Quinlan's the best for a reason, and the Force is a stalwart ally. He looks around the alley. He's finally found his way too. It's really hidden away in the underbelly of the city. He's not surprised that someone wanting the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, still the most hilarious thing to happen this century, holy shit, Kenobi, Dan would pick such an out-of-the-way place to meet up. He comes to a stop in front of a derelict building. At the end of it, all evidence pointing towards this being the meeting point. This is the place, then? La's voice is low, hushed. She hasn't said much during Quinlan's tracking, neither to argue with his methods or to question how he knows stuff. He is suspicious and on high alert, ready for when she decides to pull a blaster out, or maybe attempts to stab him with her vibroblade, either or, really.
Looks like it, unless the trail continues out of it through some other door.
He shrugs one shoulder and reaches out to touch the door gently. A brief flash of the past rushes up to meet him. A yellow-skinned Twi'lek woman heading inside, scramblers and automatic blasters, a dead drop ready to go, multiple weapons on her body, and a sense of preparation and suspicion. Quite the security net she'd set up. So how the hell did she end up dead? It makes Quinlan wonder who the fuck they're dealing with here. He pushes the door open and steps inside, Law close behind. The sight greeting him both is and isn't a surprise. He's not surprised to find the assassin's dead body, not at all. However, he is surprised to find her without any obvious signs of injury. Daisha! La starts to run forward towards the body, but Quinlan catches her by the upper arm in a strong grip.
What did I set as terms before we started on this little expedition?
La growls in frustration and rips her arm free from Quinlan's grip, but she stays put. He moves around the body slowly, taking in the placement of her arms, the nearby blaster, and the utter lack of outside damage. How the fuck did her assailant manage to kill her with no blaster wounds, no stab wounds, and no bruising on the neck to indicate strangulation? The level of decay is minimal, mostly due to the lack of nature on Coruscant. It's not far enough down for real life, so there aren't any maggots, and the microbes would be limited to what was already inside her body at the time of death. Which is rather convenient, as grim as that is to say. He kneels down and looks closer at the neck. There are faint hints of scratch marks on it. He looks at the hand that lies on the chest, a suspicion forming in his head. He reaches out and touches the body to see if he can get a glimpse of darkness. Hatred, decay, danger! Quinlan rips his hand back, choking on a gasp and pressing his lips together to keep it from leaving his mouth. What in all the core worlds was that? He'd felt the Force, but twisted, dark, and decayed. He couldn't see anything. It was all covered in a shroud of darkness. The hairs on the back of Quinlan's neck rise again. His chest burns with his lack of breathing, but Quinlan finds himself holding his breath anyway, like a small prey animal hiding from a predator. The Sith Lord. What are you doing, Van? Law's voice rips Quinlan out of his stupor.
I was just...
He coughs, trying to find some form of excuse for his reaction. Is this some Jedi mumbo-jumbo? Quinlan freezes.
Excuse me?
How the fuck... If all his precautions were for naught, he's going to be really put out. Look, Van, I don't know what the fuck the Jedi want with Daisha, but I know you're Jedi. She sighs. We didn't have any clues. Whoever did this got through all our regular safeguards. We were desperate enough to trust a Jedi. She crosses her arms across her chest. You're good at hiding it, but you're just a bit too fast. A bit too strong. And some of the shit you pulled during tracking looked like straight up magic. I'm not an idiot. Quinlan presses his lips together in frustration. He could continue to deny it, but by the look on La's face, there's nothing he can say that would make her believe it, and there's no way he'd manage a force suggestion on her. He groans and scrubs a hand across his face, careful to not rub off the makeup or the dirt that hides his tattoos. I'm pretty sure your lady here was responsible for the bombing in the Senate. La flinches backwards just the slightest bit before she bares her teeth again. So that's why you wanted to find her? Her face falls placid, and most of the previous passion in her seems to drain away, though Quinlan can still feel the tension and frustration radiate from her in the Force. Still, she does a good job of appearing unaffected. Yep, and since I'm interested in knowing who hired her, I had to find her, didn't I? La crosses her arms across her chest and looks away. Her dead drop never came in, nor did she activate her distress signals, as far as we could tell. Before that, her backup lost track of her. Her signal started bouncing across the entire city. We were completely unable to assist her, and now... For a guild that prides itself on having each other's backs, that must be a harsh blow. Well, Quinlan has limited empathy for them. They're assassins, after all, and it's not like they're some particularly altruistic type of guild, only taking hits on corrupt politicians or actual criminals. In other words, whoever did this played you like a fiddle. La just closes her eyes and doesn't deign to respond to the words. Light taunt, if Quinlan's being honest with himself. He turns his attention back to the dead body and reaches out to it with the Force. He doesn't know much about the healing arts, but he can do some minor checks, like looking for broken bones and shit like that. It's kind of necessary at times when you're on your own a lot. The bones in her neck are crushed. Despite the lack of outside signs of trauma, localized trauma anyway, her neck is clearly snapped and the bones mostly crushed. Judging from the scratch marks around her throat, someone was pawing at it. Quinlan reaches out for her hand again and turns it over. Skin beneath the fingernails, as he thought. He's surprised that she isn't wearing gloves, but on the other hand, it's lucky for him. So the Sith Lord used the Force to kill her. But why snap her neck so violently? He could just have choked her or thrown her into a wall or something similar to better disguise the use of the Force. Can you tell what killed her? La is looking at him when Quinlan turns his head to her again. He debates how much he should tell her. She's a criminal. He could likely walk her into any bounty office and they'd take her off his hands and pay him for it. But there's also the risk that she knows something he may need for the investigation. Considering that this is about the Sith Lord, Quinlan doesn't want to miss anything. Snot Nick, he says finally. It is far from all the details, but it should be enough to satisfy her. La frowns then, and her eyes narrow. Do you think I'm stupid? There's no way she died from a snapped neck. What? Quinlan stares at her for a moment, not quite sure what to make of her sudden denial. Especially since the cause of death was a snapped neck. He's not even lying to her right now. She died from a snapped neck. Why would you think that's impossible? He looks at the body again, but he can't see any reason why La wouldn't believe it. She fired her custom blaster, which a Hisli and I will only do if they realize that they're about to die. And there are no proximity marks on the blaster, not any sign of her shot having missed. So she must have hit her target without her blaster, or her hand, taking any proximity damage. That means that her assailant must have been standing decently far away, and there's no way you can snap someone's neck from a distance like that. She stares at him unblinkingly. So are you still saying she died from a snapped neck? There is something about that custom blaster that he needs to get more information about, clearly. Considering the fact that I'm pretty sure a Sith Lord was the one to kill her, yeah, it looks really fucking likely that it was a snapped neck. The stoic look on La's face morphs into a look of confusion. What exactly is a Sith Lord? Well, fuck. It's not quite surprising that a non-Jedi wouldn't know what a Sith Lord is. Before the Battle of Naboo, there hadn't been any in the public eye or the Jedis for a millennium. But it's so frustrating to have to explain everything. Few enough people even know what a Jedi is, despite them having been the Republic's peacekeepers since its formation. So explaining an opposing religious community, what the fuck would you even call the Sith? Anyway, explaining the opposite of the Jedi to someone who doesn't even know what a Jedi is.
Greedy, murderous Force users who hate Jedi above everything else and would happily destroy planets for the sake of power. According to my history lessons, anyway.
He shrugs his shoulders.
Let's just say that they're fucking evil sons of gundogs and leave it at that, shall we?
Short and sweet. La looks both confused and worried, considering all the rumors that seem to go around about Jedi. Having an evil version of them may seem scary to people, which, honestly, it is, in Quinlan's opinion. Sith are terrifying, and he doesn't really want anything to do with them at all. And here he is, following in the Sith Lord's footsteps, trying to figure out what their game plan is. Beyond kill Kenobi, obviously.
Regardless whether or not you know what a Sith Lord is, you seem to put a lot of stock into your woman's usage of a blaster. In fact, you said she'd only do it if she were dying, and you seem very certain of it. I'll explain.
This is why he let her come along in the first place. He needed her as a starting point, and he needs any and all information she has that could be useful in the investigation. La seems less than willing to be forthcoming, but she seems aware that she may not have too many choices, unless she wants to go toe-to-toe with the Jedi. The custom blasters all his Lee and I carry is one of several... Safeguard is the wrong word to use. They do not keep us safe, but they make sure our deaths are avenged by our sisters. She turns her back on Quinlan. Each blaster bolt from our specially created blasters embed a sort of nanomachine into the target. These machines act as a form of identification. La picks something out of her small hip bag and holds it aloft so Quinlan can see it, though she's turned away from him. We carry these identifiers with us at all times. When the nanomachines come into range of the machine, it will beep, and the nanomachines will start to emit light. This is to help us identify any who may have harmed our sisters, so that we can take revenge for their loss.
Quinlan's brain stalls out. A machine that will react to the person who attacked the assassin currently lying dead at his feet. A machine that would identify the Sith Lord if it came within range of them.
These nanomachines cannot be washed off. Once they've been released, they will seek their way until they reach living organic material. Thus, they will not stay on clothing and risk being lost. Though some will stay behind as residue on other materials in case a droid is the culprit. Besides, the blaster is strong enough to go through most protective material for a chance to injure.
If Quinlan was second-guessing his decision to let La come along before, he's now well aware that it was the right choice. Not only is this information that's exceedingly useful, he needs that machine.